They gave me Vicodin after my knee surgery. They kept prescribing it, so I kept taking it. I didn't know it would be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth.
Hello, and welcome to Cleveland Honors, a program dedicated to educating you about our justice system and the people behind it. In this episode, we will talk with former Cleveland Municipal Court Judge and current Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Judge, Joan Synenberg. Welcome to the program, Joan.
Thank you, Judge. It's great to see you.
Thank you. We have some history.
We do.
You used to be a Cleveland Municipal Court Judge many years ago, and now you're at the county.
Yes.
We're going to talk about the time you spent at Cleveland Municipal Court and what you thought about it and what you're doing now. But before we get to that, tell me, are you from Cleveland, and where'd you go to high school, and how'd you grow up, and what neighborhood?
Right. I'm a Clevelander. I grew up here, went to Mayfield High School, class of 75, Wildcats.
Oh, good. Okay.
Cleveland State is where I graduated from college, although I began at Bowling Green. And then my second year, Judge, I was in the singing and dancing group Up With People in the International Touring Company for a year.
They've been around for a while.
They have. Well, okay. Judge, I guess that means I have too.
Okay. Yes.
But that was 76, 77. Then I came back to Cleveland after being on the road for a year, got my degree, both undergraduate and law school at Cleveland State, Cleveland Marshall.
You sang with the touring group.
Well, they turned my mic off, but they let me do a little dancing.
A little dancing. Okay, good. Cleveland State, undergrad degrees in what?
Communications.
What made you want to go to law school?
You know, I really wanted to get into a job where I thought that I could help people. And communications was a wonderful major. I enjoyed it so much. And then law school was sort of a way I thought that I could get a degree, become an attorney, and represent. I wanted to get into the business of representing the criminally accused. And that's what I did.
Okay. And you went to law school?
I did. I was actually a social worker during that endeavor in Cuyahoga County Jail for a few years.
Okay.
And worked also with one of our mutual friends, Ed Flash Ference, when I worked at WMS radio station for a time.
Okay. That's a good background story to tell about. WMMS.
Right, with the great Jeff and Flash back in the day.
Oh, and the Buzzard.
The home of the Buzzard, right.
Okay.
Top rock and roll disc jockeys in the country.
Were you working the same shift as they were doing their show?
I was working on the token jokes of the morning, so it was a much different job than being a social worker in the jail, but it was very enjoyable. And we came out with the Best of the Token Jokes book, and that was the special project that I was assigned to for quite some time.
Okay.
Working with a lot of creative talent, wonderful people, including, of course, our buddy Flash, who's now with Cleveland Media Court.
Flash is taking good care of us.
Yes, he is.
Social work in the jail. You actually went in the jail and talked to people?
Right. My office was in there, and part of my job functions were just to sit in the pod and accept kites from inmates, which are requests for either services or some needs that they may have. And I did that for several years. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I did office in the jail, and that was good experience, especially wanting to get into the area of criminal defense work as a lawyer.
Okay.
It was good training.
All right. Now, you were in law school while you were doing this?
Right.
At Cleveland State?
Right.
Okay, so you went to night school?
I did.
Okay. Was it part-time or full-time?
Well, it took me about 3.5 years, so I think it felt like full-time, but I'm not.
Okay, so you're working and going to school.
I was working, going to school.
Okay,
right.
okay, and you did that. Now, what else did you do while you were in law school?
Study.
Okay,
Read.
okay.
Got out, grateful to get in, delighted to get out, took the bar exam and set up shop.
Okay, so you started working?
As a sole practitioner, and I wound up doing that for 16 years representing the criminally accused, and found it to be very rewarding.
Okay.
Very rewarding experience.
All right.
A lot of trial work and dealing directly with people. The social work background was so helpful because, as you know, so many of the people that we serve have myriad needs, and if we can help address those root causes, maybe we can keep people out of the criminal justice system.
That's the philosophy of many a progressive thinker. So you've been doing that since before you went to school.
Thank you.
Well, good. Now, there came a point in time when you decided you wanted to run for judge.
I had the blessing of being appointed to the Cleveland Municipal Court in 2005, January of 2005, at which point in time I decided I would be running to keep that seat, which I did, and was very grateful because, as you know, we go back, that time in Cleveland Muni was some of the best years I've ever had in my professional career. It was absolutely fantastic.
Okay. Now, who was the administrative law judge when you got appointed?
The human teddy bear, Judge Larry Jones.
Judge Larry Jones.
Yes.
Okay. And you were one of his favorites, I imagine.
No, I was his favorite.
You was his favorite.
Did he ever tell you that too?
No. He had
I think I might not be the only one who said that too, but I'll take it.
Judge Jones. So he kind of showed you the ropes when you started.
He was such a terrific leader. Was he presiding judge when you were there as well?
Yes,
Judge?
yes.
And the one thing I loved about Judge Jones is that if we had ideas, if we wanted to start a project, for instance, expungement education was one of my passions, his answer was always the same. Take the ball and run with it. I said, why am I always getting sports analogies from judges? I asked Judge Ambrose for advice. I would expect that advice from him. Yes. With Judge Jones, I got the same sports analogies. What I loved about Judge Jones was his leadership. I felt that I could go to him with any kind of idea and get great support. I thought that he did a lot to instill collegiality with us, and I absolutely loved working in that court. With him as a presiding judge, it was absolutely fantastic.
Okay. Now, the expungement process, what was it and what is it now?
Well, the expungement laws have changed, fortunately, for people who are seeking to get their record sealed. But in Ohio, it was always so narrow. However, a lot of people didn't even know of the opportunity to get a criminal record sealed. And in Cleveland Muni, which is the busiest court in the state, if I'm not mistaken, with the sheer volume of people that come through, we learned of so many people who really were sort of disadvantaged because of the fact that they had a criminal record. We see that all the time. Less opportunities for work, housing, and so many collateral consequences of a conviction. And Judge Jones is so connected in the community, and it seems that if he's involved in a project, he's able to garner great support throughout our community. And Cleveland Muni always seemed to me to be so service-oriented, so community-oriented, with the town hall meetings and the sort of hands-on approach that it truly is the people's court. And so when Judge Jones and I talked about this, we did get the support of the faith-based community, and we did expungement education programs at different churches with different members of the faith-based community for over a year. Okay. And it started with a few people showing up, and then it would be a few more, and then a few hundred, because people really wanted to know about ways to help them advance in their lives.
Okay, and that started while you were a judge in Cleveland Municipal Court.
Right, with the full support of Judge Jones. I mean, even coming up with some materials that we could hand out, getting a nice group together of people that could speak on a panel, prosecutors, defense attorneys, juvenile court personnel, people that could really help answer questions. Senator Shirley Smith was always truly a champion of trying to expand expungement laws, and she also participated. We felt that we were making a positive change, and we would get volunteer lawyers who would show up and answer questions right there on the spot. Okay. So that's a nice project.
There was some lobbying that happened to change the laws to expand expungements in Ohio. Did you go down to Columbus and do some lobbying also?
I did. I went and testified about the importance of getting a record sealed. It's been so stringent in Ohio to get a record sealed that someone really has to have, at least before the law change, you have to have almost a clean record to get your criminal record sealed. You can only have one felony or one misdemeanor. Then with the efforts of Senator Smith, that expanded, and more recently, it expanded even further.
Yes.
So that's been positive. You know, we have to, at some point in time, realize that the people in our community are, and don't mean to sound cliche here, but these are our brothers and sisters. And going back in time a little bit, the old Holly song, "He ain't heavy, he's my brother." I always think about that, you know, there but for the grace of God, go any one of us. And that song goes on to say, their welfare is our concern. So I think that these types of projects that we can get involved in, helping people move forward, not getting completely hamstrung because of their past, it's important.
And I had another attorney advise me that in England, for example, after so many years, misdemeanors automatically fall off someone's record, so they don't even show up.
People change.
Yes.
I mean, people make mistakes that are youthful indiscretions, or perhaps they just grow up, can't imagine what they've engaged in the past. So it's done thoughtfully. I mean, but you know, giving somebody a clean slate so they can prosper with people that really want to do that, I think that makes sense.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you were among the people starting that program. And it's continuing now. We will continue that. Now, who else did you serve with while you were on the bench with Larry Jones?
Well, my next door neighbor was Judge Emanuela Groves, and that was a great experience. And she would be the first one to tell you that I only love her because I love her bailiff so much, Lucretia Bolden.
Okay.
Now, I know that we're just on a shot from the waist up, but Lucretia did get me my really cute boots that I'm wearing right now, so she became a dear friend. Just the camaraderie of being together. Who else was there? Well, you were there. Judge Michael Ryan was there. The late Judge Pauline Tarver was there. Actually, when I started, Judge Mabel Jasper was still there. So, and she was next to Judge Jones, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a very lively bench and a lot of fun people.
Good.
Yes.
And they were
and others. Judge Moore.
Yeah, and they were going out in the community.
All the time. And of course, we had the monthly town halls. The late Judge Pianka. Remember those town halls? The 12 of us would be sitting behind a table and Judge Pianka would have 100 people lined up to talk to him, and the rest of us would have a few. People with their housing court issues, and a judge that really knew the city like the back of his hand.
Yes.
He was such a treasure.
Oh, we served on city council together.
Oh, so the history goes back and
then
back.
We were neighbors.
Right.
So we had good times together and loved the city together.
Such a thoughtful person.
You got moved out of Cleveland Muni, and now you're in Common Pleas. How'd that happen?
Well, I was so grateful to be elected to the Cleveland Municipal Court, and then I did enter a Common Pleas race, and I love him so dearly, my husband Roger, but he just kept telling me all along, you will never ever win. But amazingly, you know, I did, and I miss Cleveland Muni all the time. I'm very happy where I am. The challenges are not so different. We deal with really the same people, just different types of cases. Muni, of course, misdemeanor cases, felony cases, and common pleas, although similar offenses. You know, you have your DVs, and we have so many people from our mutual courts that suffer with issues of addiction and mental health. So we're dealing with many of the same issues, just different types of cases.
Specialty courts. Were you on a specialty court when you were in Cleveland Muni?
No,
okay.
I was not. I am now. I'm presently serving on the first specialized docket of its kind in the state. We've titled it Recovery Court. It's for people who are duly diagnosed with addiction disorder and trauma, specifically sexual trauma. I previously did serve on the mental health developmental disabilities specialized docket for about 5 years, which I really enjoyed. And of course, Cleveland Muni, with Judge Jones, he pioneered the drug court here.
Right.
And I had the blessing of working with him, filling in for him on occasion, joining his team meetings. I learned so much from Judge Jones about following best practices with drug court, which are swift but measured sanctions, a lot of praise for compliance and helping people move along, positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement, but very measured consequences. For instance, and I know that with issue 1 recently, so many people thought that we send low-level offenders to prison for drug offenses. I disagree with that premise. For me, for instance, for someone with a low-level drug offense, prison would be the absolute last option, because what we're really trying to do, especially with recovery court, is respond with treatment. And we find by treating both the underlying trauma, which is often undiagnosed and untreated, together with treating the issues of substance abuse that we get the best outcomes. So we really strive to holistically heal. The punitive measures, for instance, if someone has repeated sanctions, might be jail for a couple of days, long enough to get the message to deter, but we don't believe that is the appropriate best practices response, a long term in jail. These are people who have a disease and they really need help.
Does treatment work?
I'm absolutely convinced that treatment works. As a matter of fact, our mutual friend, Bill Denahan, would be the first one to tell you that recovery works. I will tell you that with Judge Matai's drug court docket, they have 2/3 less recidivism after a study was done, after the period of 1 year. In fact, even people that don't complete a specialized docket, like drug court or recovery court, if they have noncompliance and they can't stay in the program, they still have reduced recidivism rates because they do gain something from the programming. But recovery works. It's not simple. I really believe that as a community, we need to do everything we possibly can to destigmatize the diseases of addiction and mental health. So, you know, over the years historically, and Charles, Judge, I've been in the business for over 30 years now, but I remember back at the time when I was a social worker in the jail, we had learned that it was probably over 80% of people who had criminal cases that had some issue with drugs or alcohol, even if the case wasn't an addiction or a drug abuse case. And of those people, it's probably around 40% of people that also have mental health issues. So if we can address those issues as a community, help destigmatize, respond with treatment, with counseling, with a support system, sometimes built in by the court, we do have good outcomes. Recovery absolutely does work.
Okay. Now, you're on a specialized docket that's
Right.
the first of its kind in the state.
Supreme Court certified, first Supreme Court certified.
How long has this been in existence?
We're in year 4.
Year 4.
Yes.
And how many people on the docket?
That we serve, we've served over 300 people so far.
Okay. Okay.
And born of this is, okay, so you see this too. We have people who are working on dealing with their addiction disorder, dealing with mental health issues, and the trauma is incredible. I mean, there's a lot of people who are suffering from trauma. But if we get our clients who are working really hard with their recovery, taking care of their other issues, we see that so often there are collateral issues that are not addressed in the criminal justice system. Most often, the clients that we serve have children, but they have lost custody, they've lost their homes, they're involved in consumer debt. So as a result of all this, we've come up with a pro bono project with volunteer lawyers to meet with our clients on a regular basis. It's on a monthly basis in court, so everybody knows where to go, how to get there, to deal with those issues. Of course, free to our clients and of value to the volunteer lawyers because it's something we should do.
Well, that's a good place for us to take a break, talking about something free to the clients rather than free to the defendants. Mm-hmm. So what nice way to look at people who come before you.
Thank you,
Right
Judge.
now we're going to take a break, but we'll be back shortly to talk more with Judge Joan Synenberg. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge.
Welcome back to Cleveland Honors. Today, we're talking with former Cleveland Municipal Court Judge and current Common Pleas Court Judge, Joan Synenberg. Joan, we were talking about treatment, and you're running a specialty docket that's unlike anything else in the state. I have a friend I have known since we were in junior high school, and he was a poet. And when we met, he was just writing poetry and writing things down and keeping little notes all the time. Last year, I was in New York City and went to a concert at the Blue Note in Manhattan, and he sang. He had just been released from prison in Connecticut, 7 years for drug possession. And he sang a song about the revolution would not be televised. The audience was full of people, his former fans from college in those days. And I asked him after the concert if he had been in treatment, drug treatment, while he was in prison. And he knew I was a judge, and we were talking, and he told me there was no drug treatment in jail for 7 years. He signed a new record contract and told me he was going on a tour in Europe before he came back to America to do another tour here. And but he overdosed shortly after I saw him at the Blue Note. So I have some of his records, some of his memories, but treatment, I know it works. That drug treatment works. You mentioned Bill Dunahan, our friend. For people that don't know Bill, would you tell them who is Bill?
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
Bill Dunahan was the former CEO of the Adams Board, the umbrella social service agency for all the social service agencies in Cuyahoga County. He's also the former head of just about every department you could think of in the state, from Bureau of Workers' Comp. He's a former warden, former safety director. He has a long history, but definitely a passion for helping people with addiction issues and mental health issues. I'm sorry to hear that story about this gentleman, and that's the scary part about this disease, is that treatment works, but ignoring this disease can have such terrible consequences. Cuyahoga County lost so many people last year to overdose deaths, and in the city, Cleveland Police I have to commend, because their response to people who are overdosing has evolved, where they will try to get people to Metro, meet with a recovery coach, get them somehow or another streamlined into either detox and or treatment. So I think everyone realizes that this is a community health crisis. Back to the destigmatization, we really have to look at people with the disease of addiction as people who have a disease, an illness, not bad people, not people who are unworthy of our concern and our support.
And it's a job, because it's continuing. And like you said, issue 1 didn't pass, but what are we going to replace issue 1 with? And how are we going to get some more funding into helping with treatment?
The point that you brought up from the gentleman who overdosed is so critical, and that is that we have people who go to jail, go to prison, that really need help. I mean, it would be ideal to think that we could have services, and that's another issue, of course, but in our county jail or in our penitentiary system, there are programs that perhaps people can get into if they can get through a waiting list in the penitentiary, because while there are programs, it takes time to actually be accepted. But we do know that there are programs, educational programs, IOP. There are different types of programs in the penitentiary system. And again, this is evolving because we see the need with the loss of life. And that happens whether people are in the community or behind bars. And that's another issue. Not to go too far astray from our original topic here, but I do believe that the population of incarcerated persons is an invisible population that we typically ignore. We have 50,000 people locked up in the state of Ohio. That's the size of a decent-sized community that have the same types of issues that all of us face. It just seems to me that it would be humane to address people who are incarcerated, because they will, for the vast, vast majority, be getting out at some point in time. And we want them, we hope, to get back into our community as strong as they can, as equipped as they can to work, to support their family, and to be part of a healthy community.
And that's very important. So thank you for what you're doing in your specialized docket court.
Thank
and
you.
You also have a regular docket, I would imagine.
Right.
So you see all the stuff that comes through the justice system still.
The same situation. Again, we serve a lot of the same types of, people with the same types of needs. And I don't know how much you're seeing it in Cleveland Muni, whether you're in 3D or somewhere else, but it seems that there's gun violence that's just ravaging our streets right now. So about 1.5 years ago, I started a listening tour in the jail, and I just go on a routine basis, usually about once a month. I was just trying to find out from people who are in the system why we have these issues, what solutions could be identified. And I've listened to hundreds of people, and I will tell you that one of the takeaways that was so concerning to me is just with a non-scientific, by a show of hands type of poll, speaking with the people who are incarcerated, I'd say about 20% at least do not know where they will go when they leave jail. And a lot of those people who I'm talking about have kids, and they're worried about supporting their families, and they don't want to go back to the lifestyle, but they don't feel that they have options. So any kind of services or programming that could be offered to help someone with the basics, getting an education, getting a job, being able to support yourself and your family while they're incarcerated, if that's where they are, I think is just, again, the best thing we can do to help people, which overall helps the health of our community.
But unfortunately, not everybody thinks like you. And,
you know, I think that viewpoints are changing, I do, Judge, because when I first started this, you know, as a criminal lawyer, it seemed like I was always fighting to have a judge consider a sentence other than incarceration. And there was a time in our career span where lock them up and throw away the key was a very popular message to send to the community. But what we did see, and I think that what we've learned over years and years of studying sentencings and what works and what doesn't, is that if you send the low-level offender who doesn't necessarily have a high risk of reoffending to jail or prison, you may in fact defeat your own purposes and increase the chance of recidivism. So following evidence-based practices, what we've learned and what we've tried to own and let our community know is that you got to get to that root cause. And if you can address the offender's needs, it can help us. Now, not to say that every person that appears before us is going to be amenable to that. Some people are dangerous. Some people are violent. And, you know, I have taken chances, calculated risks on people, and made a mistake, you know, where someone will be on supervision with me and then reoffend, or, you know, every judge's worst nightmare, reoffend with a violent offense. So sentencings are a very, very complex issue, but sentencing someone, even if they do get a period of incarceration, should not be you're a horrible person, goodbye, you're gone. It should be you're going to pay your debt to society. You're probably going to come back unless you're going away forever. Please be equipped when you get out to not come back. How do we expect someone not to return if we don't do anything to help change circumstances? I think we have to own this. Otherwise, it will lead to further decay in our community. You know, people who come in front of us are people. They have families. They make mistakes. For the nonviolent offender, I believe they must be distinguished from the violent offender. Those are the tough calls to make sometimes because we can't look into a crystal ball.
Yeah, if we send somebody to jail
Right.
and don't give them the tools when they get out to be better, you send a junkie to jail for 10 years, no treatment, he gets out of jail, he's still a junkie. He's going to go look and try and find some drugs first day out of jail. But with treatment, hopefully their mindset has changed.
And there's so much more that goes with it because there's the addiction and there's the lifestyle. So when you talk about people will get out and engage in what they knew, of course, and we can't be surprised by that. So what I tell people on recovery court is that we are in your business. Okay, we will be asking you who you're hanging out with, what people, what places, what things are central in your life, and we do try to do everything we can to interfere with our clients and using. So every type of interruption that we can do, high accountability, frequent reporting. Our recovery court has an entire team. It's a team of about 10 with clinical professionals. We meet every week. We discuss every case. We praise and honor people who are in compliance, and then also address we try to be as impactful and supportive, but if there's non-compliance, we have to address that too.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
Glad you're having a good time doing that. Now, you visit the jail.
Right.
You go inside.
I just sit in the pod.
How do the jailers think? What do they think about that?
I will tell you, it's been incredible because, first of all, I've learned a lot. Our jail is for Cuyahoga County. I've gone, what's our county population, the breakdown? I don't know. But I know it's not 100% African American, and I've been in pods that are 100% African American. So you walk and you say, like, what's wrong with this picture? Right off the bat, you see one thing that just doesn't seem to make any sense. And there's a lot of common issues, of course, rampant loneliness and boredom. And if someone has nothing to do in jail, I mean, it's almost like their brain turns to mush. They come. I walk in and I sit down with them for a few hours, and it takes a few moments for us to establish that it is a safe environment. They don't have to give me last names. I want to know what they can tell us, what they can share about their experiences. And I've heard people say very compelling things about their sense of safety. And to answer your question about how the jailers have been, one young man said, nobody will ever understand. And he turned to the sergeant who was escorting me that day, said, you'll never understand. And he kind of gave this guy the usual thing, like, I'm alone, nobody understands my dilemma. And as soon as he was finished, this particular sergeant said, well, I remember being in a different pod in this jail as an inmate thinking, I'm never going to go anywhere in my life. He said, and somebody gave me a chance. And he gave this very impassioned, compassionate, supportive conversation. I don't want to say speech because it was more of a dialogue. It was really nice to see. But, I hear these kids say that they're really afraid in their own neighborhoods. One young man said to me, I don't want to be, he said, we live like dinosaurs. I said, what do you mean? He said, we live just trying not to be extinct. And there's that kind of, that's just so sad to me that there's that sense of, I have to survive. This is, every day is arduous. I heard issues of trust, don't trust anyone, including your family. I mean, there's a lot of issues regarding safety, protecting siblings, protecting little girls in the neighborhood, carrying guns because other people carry guns. I mean, it's sort of very informative and leaving there most times feeling kind of sad.
Well, there's a mindset that comes out of jail that sometimes is not healthy.
We're trying to change that, though. If we can get, mentors or people in the community, in the business community that want to help others, let a kid come and shadow you. Be a big brother, big sister. Engage in mentoring programs, or maybe we could even have educational programs, different opportunities for people that have lesser opportunities. Trying again to bridge the justice gap by volunteer work, but also giving opportunities when it comes to employment.
And that's one of the reasons we're doing this show is because we want to explain to the public there's a lot more that happens outside of the courtroom when people are there. You mentioned 3D, for example. Most people won't know what 3D is. Now, you used to come there on a regular basis. Why don't you explain what 3D is?
Well, that's where cases go from the Cleveland Muni Court to the felony system, and you don't know who you're going to see there, and it's a very, very interesting dynamic. People will come in there. They could be charged with a very low-level offense or a very serious offense. The municipal court judges preside over that. It can be a very busy docket. But what I did learn about Cleveland Muni is that you just don't know who you're going to see at any given moment. And the problems that we suffer individually and as a community apply to everybody.
And we have recently started doing pretrial services
how's
in
that going?
Cleveland. It's been going on now for about 2 months. And social services starting from the point in time they come into the Sally Port when they're arrested.
Oh, that's excellent.
We've got some social workers and we've got some former probation officers who are there on the front end to provide some help and guidance from the first day of contact with the court system on the 3rd floor in courtroom D. So we're trying to make some changes, but it's expensive.
Right.
It takes time, and it takes getting some knowledge out about what's going on.
First of all, I commend Cleveland Muni on their constant innovations. That's wonderful. And although it seems that the resources, get gobbled up very quickly, I would suggest that it's money well spent, because in the long run, if you don't help people, I love that idea of getting them from the moment that that they're ensnared in the system. If we don't, we're going to wind up supporting that person one way or another, and hopefully it's not through something like incarceration. But helping people right off the bat, we have their attention then too, because many times they're incarcerated. So we say, you know, we can offer you these types of services. They may otherwise not seek that on their own. So that's where the system can be a fortunate intersection in someone's life.
And federal court has been doing pretrial services for at least 20 years.
Right.
And they love it. So we heard about how good it was there in Walter Trad at the municipal level. And it ties into almost everything you're saying about starting to get some changes throughout the criminal justice system.
But we're seeing them, don't you think?
Oh, yeah,
I think we're seeing those changes. It's slow and steady.
Oh, I'm happy with the way things have changed over my 30-year career.
There's just more work to be done. And I thought that the objectives of issue 1 were really important, and I think that reducing our prison population is something that we've been harping about for a long time. And hopefully this will open some people's eyes.
Okay, well, thank you. It's been fun talking with you. There were some other things I want to touch on, but as always, our time is limited here. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Cleveland Honors. And remember, as Justice Potter Stewart once said, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. So long, everyone.